I found the statement by accident, Sophie told me. 11 months. 11 months of my husband quietly covering our son's credit card interest, and he never said a word. 11 months. That's how long this had been happening before Sophie knew the real number. And honestly, when she finally told me what that added up to, I had to sit with it for a second too. I've spent years studying the exact moment where love for your kids and honesty with your partner stop being the same thing. The moment we're just helping our son quietly becomes, I've been keeping something from my spouse. And look, if you're watching this because you've got an adult kid you're helping out right now, rent, a car payment, a credit card that got away from them, I want you to know something before we go any further. You're not a bad parent. Nobody's coming for you here. But there's a difference between helping your kid and disappearing into an arrangement your partner never actually signed off on. That difference is what we're talking about today. So if this is hitting close to home already, go ahead and hit subscribe, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why helping our kid and protecting our marriage aren't automatically the same math, and what it actually takes to make sure they don't quietly cancel each other out. Let's start with how this actually happens, because honestly, nobody sits down and decides, I'm going to hide financial support from my spouse. That's not how it starts. It never is. Sophie and Tobi's son moved out 3 years ago. Good job. Decent apartment. The whole thing looked fine on paper. But you know how it's been. Rates went up, rent went up, and basically overnight his budget that used to work just didn't anymore. So he leaned on a credit card to cover the gap. And Tobi, being a dad who couldn't stand watching his kids struggle, started helping. First it was one rent payment, just to get him through a rough month. Totally reasonable, right? Then it became sort of a standing thing, quietly, without either of them really deciding it out loud. And then, somewhere along the way, Tobi noticed the credit card interest piling up too, and he just started covering that as well. Every single month, without telling Sophie the real total. Here's the thing though, and I need you to really hear this. Tobi wasn't some secretive villain. He wasn't hiding a gambling problem or a second family. He was trying to protect his son and protect his wife from worry, both at the same time. He told me later, I didn't want her to think I was doing too much, and I didn't want her to think our son couldn't handle his own life. 2 fears, both about love, both about protection, and somehow, stacked together, they became a secret. Isn't that wild when you actually stop and think about it? That the road to keeping something from the person you married is almost never paved with bad intentions. It's paved with 100 small, reasonable-sounding decisions that nobody ever said out loud. So here's what I want to ask you, and be honest with yourself for a second. Is there a number leaving your household right now that your partner doesn't fully know about? Not because you're hiding it on purpose, just because it never came up. Because it felt easier not to mention it. Because you told yourself you'd bring it up when the time was right. Yeah, that's usually where this starts. Let's talk about the moment Sophie actually found out, because I think this is the part a lot of you are going to recognize. She wasn't snooping, she wasn't suspicious, she was filing away some old statements, just doing the boring admin of life, and she noticed the same transfer, month after month, going out to their son's account. She added it up herself, right there at the kitchen table. 11 months. And once she calculated the total, rent help plus interest coverage combined, it came to just over $4,000 that she'd had no idea about. Now, $4,000 isn't going to bankrupt most households. That's not really the point here. And honestly, that's what took Sophie the longest to untangle in her own head. Because when she confronted Tobi, her first instinct wasn't even really about the money. It was this gut punch feeling of, wait, what else don't I know? If this was invisible for 11 months, what else has been invisible? That's the real cost here. It's not the number. It's the silence around the number. And can we just talk honestly for a second about how differently this hits depending on who you are in the relationship? Because if you're the partner who's been quietly helping, like Tobi, you're probably watching this thinking, but I was trying to do the right thing. Why does that make me the bad guy? And you're not wrong to feel that. Your instincts came from love, genuinely. But here's the plain language version of why it still matters. Money leaving a shared household, even for the most loving reason in the world, stops being just helping and starts being a secret the moment your partner would have wanted a say and didn't get one. That's the line. It's not about the dollar amount, it's about the vote. And if you're the partner who might be on Sophie's side of this, the one who could find out something like this tomorrow, I want to say this gently. Your hurt isn't about being cheap or not caring about your kid. It's about trust. It's about realizing the person who's supposed to be your teammate has been quietly making decisions solo. That feeling is real, and it deserves to be taken seriously, not brushed off with, "But it was for our son." Now, not every couple handles this the way Sophie and Tobi eventually did. And honestly, it helps to see the other version too, the version where it goes sideways. I talked to another couple, Maya and Kwame, who went through something similar, except in their case, it wasn't rent or interest. It was Kwame quietly co-signing a car loan for his daughter from a previous relationship, without ever telling Maya it had his name on it. When the daughter missed 2 payments, and the bank came looking for Kwame, Maya didn't just find out about the loan. She found out on a random Tuesday afternoon from a phone call in front of their own kids. And that's the difference, honestly, between a hard conversation and a genuine rupture. It's not always about how much money moved. It's about how you find out. Maya told me it wasn't the loan. It was that a stranger on the phone knew more about our finances than I did. That one landed hard for me, and I think it should land for you too. Because it's basically the same wound as Sophie's, just discovered in a much colder, much more public way. Here's what actually happened next with Sophie and Tobi, because I think the resolution matters just as much as the confession. They didn't have some massive blow-up fight. Not really. Sophie was hurt, obviously, but what she told me was I wasn't as angry about the money as I was about being left out of the decision. And once Tobi actually heard that, heard it wasn't a judgment on how much he loved their son, something shifted for him too. They sat down that same weekend. No phones, just the 2 of them and a notepad, and they actually walked through what they could comfortably afford to give their son each month without touching their own savings goals. It took them almost 2 hours, honestly, because it wasn't just about the number. It was about actually saying out loud what they were each afraid of. Tobi admitted he was scared their son would think less of them if they said no to anything. Sophie admitted she was scared of becoming the bad guy in her son's eyes if she was the one who suggested a limit. Once those fears were actually on the table, instead of hiding underneath the spreadsheet, the number itself took about 10 minutes to agree on. So they set a cap, a specific figure they were both genuinely comfortable with, each month. No more guessing, no more solo decisions made at 11 at night while paying bills alone. And they added one more rule. Nothing moves without both of them knowing before it happens, not after. Not permission-seeking, not walking on eggshells, just visibility. A 5-minute check-in once a month, so nothing ever slides back into silence again. Their son, when he eventually found out how close this had come to becoming a real wedge between his parents, didn't feel proud or relieved or even all that grateful, honestly. He felt guilty. He told them, "I had no idea this was causing problems. I would have figured something else out." And that's usually how it goes, isn't it? The kid we're trying so hard to protect from struggle almost never wants to know their comfort came at the cost of their parents' partnership. Now look, I know some of you are thinking, okay, but what if we genuinely can't afford both? Helping our kid and full transparency feels like it'll cause a fight every single month. Totally fair concern. But here's the plain truth. The fight you're avoiding by staying quiet is almost always smaller than the fight you'll have later when the silence finally breaks. Sophie didn't confront Tobi over $4,000. She confronted him over 11 months of not being asked. And Maya didn't confront Kwame over a car loan. She confronted him over a phone call that knew their finances better than she did. So here's your actual takeaway. The thing I want you to genuinely do this week, not someday. Sit down with your partner. No blame, no ambush, just an honest question. Is there any money going out right now to anyone that the other person doesn't fully know about? And if the answer is yes, even a little bit yes, even well, technically, that's your cue. Not to panic, just to talk. Set a number together. Set a check-in together. That's it. That's the whole fix. And it costs nothing but honesty. That one of them had been quietly funding a completely separate account the whole time, and what it actually meant when it finally came out. Until then, take care of the marriage first. The money will follow. Remember what Sophie said at the start? I found the statement by accident. 11 months. 11 months of my husband quietly covering our son's credit card interest, and he never said a word. That confession was never really about the 11 months, or even the money. It was about wanting to be trusted with the truth together, instead of finding it by accident, alone at a kitchen table. If this one hit somewhere real for you, go ahead and subscribe, because next time we're talking about the couple who found out 15 years into their Mara.